Conventional wisdom can get you caught in a bad spot sometimes. And I wonder if Texas is on the verge of that in the Cotton Bowl against Ohio State, because Quinn Ewers has not played super well since during the SEC championship game, first two rounds of the playoffs, has not been great, outstanding, etc. And I wonder if the Longhorns are in a situation where Steve Sarkisian is going to let Quinn Ewers take down the ship. Because Texas is playing pretty well outside of the quarterback spot. And it's not to say Quinn Ewers is playing poorly. He's just not playing as well as he's capable of, as well as we are used to seeing Quinn Ewers play. And conventional wisdom tells you, dance with the one who brung you. Quinn Ewers got you this far. You're going to have faith in him to either get over the hump or not be the reason that you lost. And in a game like this, where Ohio State's playing really well and their defense is pretty darn good, are you in a spot where you're going to let Quinn Ewers be the one who takes the ship down and not the other way around, where he goes down with the ship, where he's the one bringing it down? Because conventional wisdom says he got you here. But I think Nick Saban kind of threw a wrench in that in the national championship game back in 2018, where he benched Jalen Hurts for Tua Tagovailoa at halftime of that national championship game, and Alabama wins it. And it's become this legendary move where, you know what, if it doesn't work out, he might be the biggest buffoon in the history of the planet. But it did. It did work out. So we look at it as this ballsy, gutsy. Can you believe he decided that in the national championship game? Would Steve Sarkisian do the same in the semifinal against Ohio State and bring in Arch Manning? Now, the two situations aren't as similar as they might seem, because while Tua Tagovailoa was a highly regarded prospect and ended up, going on to be a first-round NFL draft pick, and the argument still rages about whether or not he's that good, Arch Manning's a whole different animal. There are things that accompany Arch Manning that don't accompany any other quarterback in the sport, just because that last name. Additionally, there are things that people are going to expect from Arch Manning because his last name is Manning, and he's going to draw additional attention. People are going to wonder and question whether Texas could have, should have put him in. Right, fair, or indifferent, whether he deserves to be the starting quarterback for the Longhorns over Quinn Ewers is a moot point at this point. Texas is riding Quinn Ewers. But do you get to the semifinals? And no matter how much faith you have in Quinn Ewers, no matter how much admiration you have for him as a person, as a player, etc., can you let him be the one that brings the ship down? I think the answer to that question for Steve Sarkisian is yes. Because there have been opportunities to replace him. There have been opportunities. And I brought this up earlier this season, and I'll tell you I was wrong. I thought that Steve Sarkisian, I think it was the Georgia game, the first Georgia game, that they put Quinn Ewers in, or put Arch Manning in for Quinn Ewers. And they didn't perform all that much better. But I thought, that's a bad decision, man. You're going to unintentionally start a quarterback controversy, which I don't think you're going to want to do, because you're going to have to answer questions about this for the rest of the season. That any time, the first time Quinn Ewers throws a bad pass or forces a turnover, and even if they just go 3 and out back-to-back drives, there's going to be calls and questions about Arch Manning. And that didn't necessarily happen. So kudos to Steve Sarkisian for being smarter than I am. But at the same time, it's undeniable that Quinn Ewers is not playing at the level that he's capable of consistently. Now, there are still, every once in a while, there was a throw against Arizona State that was like, holy hell. There are only a few quarterbacks in the sport that make that throw. And then there are other times where it's like, what in the hell are you doing, son? And I think you're not going to be able to overcome those wild swings of inconsistency against Ohio State. Now, I think the counter argument to that is, like, do you believe that Arch Manning's going to be significantly more consistent against a defense like that in the semifinals? The answer is probably no. But if Quinn Ewers throws 2 first-half interceptions, or an interception and gets sacked 4 times, and they're losing 14-6 at half, do you think that Steve Sarkisian will bring Arch Manning out of halftime and say, hey, you got to go win it for us? I don't get the impression that the answer to that question is yes. And whether that says more about Quinn Ewers, Steve Sarkisian, or Arch Manning, I don't know. I just know that for Texas to be in a position to be successful, they have to have high-quality quarterback play. And I'm talking, I guess, just in the semifinal against Ohio State. For them to be in a situation to be put in a position to win the game, they have to play better at that position than they did against Arizona State and they did against Clemson. And is it a surefire lock that they get that from Quinn Ewers? I don't think the answer to that question is yes. And I don't know that they have another better option for those areas, for consistency from Arch Manning than Quinn Ewers. I don't think you get that either. So I don't have a ton of faith that Texas is going to be in the hunt against Ohio State. It's really easy to watch Ohio State the last 2 games against Tennessee, ass kicking, against Oregon, ass kicking, and look at Texas and say, this is a team that is primed to beat Ohio State. I just don't feel that. I can be wildly incorrect, and I'll be the first to tell you that on Sunday. But I just don't see it that way. I wonder if it's just one of those times where a team has reset after a bad loss and is rectified their issues and is peaking at the right time. Because I don't know that anybody outside of potentially Notre Dame is playing as hot and as confident as Ohio State is right now. And I think Texas got their confidence shaken just a little bit last week where, and I don't think they felt this way, but the talk the entire lead up to that bowl game was Arizona State doesn't deserve to be here. And Texas played in the first 3 quarters like Arizona State didn't deserve to be there. And something flipped. And whether that flip leads to a hangover now or whether they get it righted, I don't know. But it just feels like the Longhorns are willing to let Quinn Ewers sink the ship rather than go down with it. And if that's the thought process, I'll take Ohio State in a 35-20 win, and maybe even Texas scoring 20 is asking a lot. Want to know your thoughts, your predictions for the Cotton Bowl. Who wins? What's the score? Drop them in the comments below. Would love to hear them. That'll do it for today's episode of the Daily Huddle. Appreciate you making us a part of your day, however it is, wherever it is you're doing so. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. Make sure you're getting all the great college football content we're pumping out. If you're listening on the podcast feed, drop a 5-star review. Goes a long way in helping out the channel. I'll see you Sunday for another episode of the Daily Huddle.